Okay, there we go. All right, Ann.
Hey, everybody. I am Ann Pratchett, and I am in my breakfast room. I know it looks like I'm in front of the Chinese pagoda, but I'm in my breakfast room at home, staying safe in Nashville, Tennessee. And I am here with my friend, Kate DiCamillo. Kate, where are you?
I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm in my dining room, which it's funny that I even have a dining room because I I can't cook and I'm lousy at entertaining. But that's where I am because the light is good. Um, and uh, and you can see behind me that my little breakfast nook in there.
Well,
And that I do eat.
if you can't cook and you're lousy at entertaining, then it's a good use of a dining room to make it into your Zoom studio.
Okay, so Ann,
Yeah.
Ann, you know what we're going to do?
We're going to have a conversation about our friendship and writing.
Yes.
So it's going to be 20 minutes of us stepping on each other's lines. So I'm going to tell the story of how Kate and I met and became friends. Let's see if I can get through a couple of sentences without her jumping on my line here. So this is what it is. Guys, you're really seeing the real life interaction of Patchett and DiCamillo. So I had met Kate a couple of times. I'm the co-owner of Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee, and Kate had come and I had met her at the store a few times, very briefly. I met you once in Minneapolis at Winter Institute. We were on a panel together. We liked each other. Hey, hi, that was it. And then one day I got an email from a writer that I know, Nell Freudenberger, a terrific novelist, and she asked me if I knew Kate because she had just finished reading The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane to her 7-year-old son. And she wanted me to get a message to Kate, which was that the book had completely changed their lives. And I thought, yeah, I didn't have your email at that point, but I thought I can find you without any problem. But I also realized at that moment that I was really a jerk. I had met you, I liked you, but I hadn't read your books because I don't have kids and I didn't read middle grade. And so I thought, before I track this woman down, I am going to do due diligence and read your books. And I started with The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and I wound up reading every single thing you had ever written, which is really saying a lot because you have been very, very productive. And after I finished all of my reading, then I found you, I reached out to you, and then we began our friendship. Is that about
right? Yes. Can I talk now?
Good, really. Yeah.
It's interesting because it is really hard to talk over you in this format. As much as I would like to do it, it's just like I can't do it. So everything that Ann said is true. But like from my end, I have to say that I have been a reader and a huge fan of Ann Pratchett. It's a magical name, and I was and then all of a sudden there was her name in my inbox, and I was very intimidated, and also deeply moved by what you wrote to me. But I was like, I was just taken aback. And also, remember, Ann, that what happened was we started emailing, you started reading me. I had already read all of yours, of course. When I was working at a book warehouse here in Minneapolis, this is like 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, I read The Magician's Assistant, and that's where I started with Ann's books. And it was literally life-changing for me. And I had been this huge admirer. So now this person who I adore shows up and emails me and says that she likes what I wrote, which is like, it's a dream come true. So then we start emailing back and forth. Ann's working on a novel at that point, this novel. And I'm working on a novel, which is actually will come out next year. And so, Anne, you know, we started to ask each other writerly questions. What are you working on? What are you working on? Anne, of course, is absolutely forthcoming because she's Ann Pratchett. She says, I'm working on a novel that is potentially titled The Dutch House. And then she asked me what I was working on. And I said, I can't tell you because my teeth will fall out if I tell you. Was that not correct?
Have they fallen out yet? How is that working?
I still have them all.
Pretty.
And why my teeth? And Anne always said, "Why would your teeth fall out?" Well, because she's Ann Patchett, and I was. But now you're not Ann Patchett. You're just my friend that I write with, and I'm not intimidated by you. And I do talk to you about what I'm writing now. But and you've read this novel that's going to come out next year, and my teeth have not fallen out. What do you want to say, Anne?
Shut up now. I've not only read the novel that's coming out next year, I absolutely love it. You keep raising the bar on yourself. Maybe that's what we should talk about, because I think that that's something that we both do. This idea that you have to keep raising the bar in all sorts of different ways so that you're engaged and interested. One book that I love that just came out, the Stella Endicott and the Anything is Possible poem from the Deckerwood Drive series. So the thing that I love about your career is that you have all these different stratas. You've got the Mercy Watsons, you've got the picture books, you've got the Deckerwood Drives, you've got your novels, and that you work on them in this circular way. But in every category, every time you do something new, I can really feel you pulling yourself up and tackling something that's a little harder and new. You are not resting in any category of your life. You want to talk about that?
And yeah, and nor are you, which goes to this whole idea of, ingenuity and challenging yourself and imagination. And, you and I talk about this all the time, how we feel so lucky to get to do this, right? And we know that you've known since you were a child that this is what you wanted to do.
Who of you?
I not, I guess you and I haven't super talked about this at length, but it was like, I got the idea in college and then wasted a lot of time not doing it. But you've been on this course since, how old were you when you decided?
I 5 or something. This is all I've ever done. This is it. Every time I turn the radio on and hear Paul Simon sing One Trick Pony, my eyes fill with tears because I feel like it's my anthem song. Yeah.
Well, but this also goes back to I want to talk about how that thing of how we need to stay engaged and keep on throwing out new challenges for ourselves. But I also want to go back to that kid who made up her mind at 5 years old that that's what she wanted to do. And I want to talk about how in these, so we've been, life has changed so profoundly, i.e. we're doing this, as opposed to how I used to live my life, which was to go out and talk to kids at signings, but also in school visits. And right. I always felt like if there was one message that a kid could walk away from me coming into their school and talking to them about writing, it was this, that here I am, a small, messy person, and I get to do what I think is the most magical thing in the world, which is tell stories. So if they look at me standing up there, messy, wildly imperfect, and think she's nothing special, but yet she gets to do this because, and I tell them this because I talk so much about persistence. And I think that also, that whole notion of wanting something and refusing to give up is also ingenuity, right? It's just like you and I have talked about this, Anne, how you just weren't going to give up, it took, so do you want to trace that kind of like, here's the 5-year-old you, and then you went to Iowa and got your MFA, and then you came back, and I love this. You came back to Nashville and you worked at TGI Fridays.
Right.
And you were just going to write.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about a message to a kid on a school visit, and I feel like my message is no one's watching. There is no danger and no one is watching. And in a way, that can be the very scariest thing. But what I learned over the years of being a waitress and doing things successfully, doing things not so successfully, is that it really, really doesn't matter. We're telling stories. We're not in the position to hurt anyone. We're not in the position to save the world. We're making art, and it's such a privilege. And you make it primarily for yourself, and then take it out into the world and share it. But I think that so many people feel like, oh, I can't do this. I'm going to be judged, or I can't speak my truth because it's going to offend people in my family or people that I know. And what I have found more than anything throughout the course of working in my life is that it really doesn't matter. And therefore, you have this tremendous freedom in that. If it really doesn't matter and nobody is watching, you should do your absolute best, most creative, most experimental work and tap into that part of yourself that's going to push yourself farther and farther, because judgment really isn't the problem. I say that as somebody who's never looked on social media. I exist in this.
But it's interesting because it's so much, it's who you are in the most profound way. Because and I'm saying you, Ann Pratchett, you know who you are. That makes it easier to take that leap. It's also a wonderful thing to go into schools and tell people that when you, because you've got Landslide, and you've got that's a picture book for kids, and you went into schools, right?
Well, I went with the brilliant Robin Price Glasser, who is the illustrator and had done the Fancy Nancy series and is so on fire in front of a group of kids. It's the most amazing thing. Everything I know about kids, I learned from Robin. Neither one of us have children. We should put that out there too.
Oh, you and I, Robin does.
Right, Robin does, but you and I do not have children, which I think is an interesting point.
But you and I both, because we talk a lot about being kids, we remember. I remember hearing Beverly Cleary interviewed. She's still alive, but this is when she was like 98. Now she's like 102. And somebody said, well, how do you get into the mind of a fourth grader? And she said, that fourth grader is right here. And that's the way it is for me. And even though you're primarily adult, that child you is right front and center. Do you think that child you also plays into the adult you writing? I've never thought to ask you that before.
Well, I think that the child that I was plays into it insofar as, again, I'm the one trick pony, right? I am continually that one person doing this only thing that I want to do, the only thing that I know how to do. But I think that it's much more interesting for you, because people must say to you all the time, how do you write for children if you don't have children? I mean, do you feel like that's been a big issue in your career?
It hasn't been a big issue, but I remember the very first time I got interviewed, and the interviewer said, how do you get into the mind of a 10-year-old? And I remember being gobstopped by the question, because to me the answer was so obvious. Well, I was a 10-year-old.
Right.
But I've found that for a lot of people, they genuinely don't have the access to that 10-year-old. And for whatever reason, it is just like Beverly Cleary said, it is right here for me. And I feel from knowing you well that it's right there for you as well. But I think a lot of people just consciously or subconsciously, they forget about that child. And perversely enough, or I feel like sometimes when you have kids, you don't want to remember how painfully alive you are as a 10-year-old, because you want to protect your child from that. Do you think that that's true?
I think that's a really good point, that maybe by not having children, we were able to hold on to our own childhood experiences as opposed to trying to give someone else some spectacular childhood experience, an idea of what a childhood should be instead of what a childhood was, which is sort of grimy and messy and depressing and scary and fun and very creative and imaginative. One thing that I have really found during this time of pandemic and being home and locked down and quiet, I feel much closer to that part of myself, because I feel like my professional self has really fallen away. You know, the me that's always getting on a plane and standing on a stage and giving a talk and signing books and answering questions. It's like, that's all gone now. I'm just home and I'm myself. And all this scaffolding of self-protection has really come off. And I feel much, much closer to myself as a child now than I ever have.
That's a really, really interesting point. And it's funny because I feel like that has always been the part of me that writes, but that 10-year-old is also the person who goes on stage, which is really interesting to me to think about that and to parse it all out in my mind. And that is, remember when I did, this is back, before things changed, and I had emailed you where I'd done a signing, and a kid was leaning against me as I signed his book, and his mother said, "Don't lean on her." And this little boy said, "It's okay, Mom, she knows me." And so I feel like that kind of, which was, and I said to you that it made me tip sideways. It moved me so much that this child said this. But it's that I think that kids see that 10-year-old that I was when I'm up on stage. So it's really interesting to me, because I think that's who I take on stage. I don't know that I have an adult self that I take anywhere. Come on, Ann, it was a softball. I thought you would whack it out of the park.
Dinner and the movies, but definitely I see your adult self. And we've talked about this, how you have said to me, people feel so protective of you. People have such maternal impulses towards you, your friends, which I don't have that.
And thanks for not wanting to take care of me. Thank you.
I really don't. I mean, I feel like we meet on this very level playing field of equals, and it's so much fun to talk about writing and what we're doing, what we want to do, what we're struggling with. But I don't think of you as a kid. We're the same. Actually, I'm like 5 or 6 months older than you are.
I knew that was going to come up at one point or another.
I'm the sister, yeah.
So you're December, and you're 4 months older than I am, and and this is
in those 4 months.
And it's funny because I think about how this whole friendship has progressed, and how much I've come to rely upon you as a sounding board, not just for the stories, but for just how we move through this time and how we move through the time before, as like doing, how do you do this kind of signing? How do you, all of that, you have become so, I just you in the warp and woof of my life in a way that is really profound to me. And I would just like to say, as long as we're recording, how much it means to me, and how the kid part of me did have to put aside the awe of Ann Pratchett has emailed me. Yeah. And now that is totally gone, and I am no longer an
drop that whole Ann Pratchett thing right now. I remember one of the first times I met you. in Minneapolis, and you were like, I can't sit next to Ann Pratchett. And I was like, oh, could you give me a break? I don't in any way see myself as that person. So I sort of feel like you're teasing me. But
Oh, of course I'm not teasing you. And you have to understand.
we should drop that whole line of questioning. And you know what? We should also be thinking about moving this conversation to the end. One of the things about our friendship is that not only do we email each other about 15 times a day, and you've come to visit several times in Nashville, but we will get on the phone and we will talk like crazy people for an hour and a half, often both walking on treadmills. And one of the things that I really love is that there are not a lot of opportunities when you're an adult, and especially two adults that live in different states and don't get to see each other that often, how we have a very schoolgirl friendship. We have this sort of like, wait, am I supposed to wear the blue socks or the pink socks today? Here's another picture of my dog. Can I have another picture of your dog? I mean, the very mundane level at which we interact, as well as the profound level, as well as like, this is what I'm struggling with in my work, and will you read this chapter? And I really want to get your opinion on this. But then there's also, you know, what did you have for breakfast? I don't know. What are you going to have for breakfast? And that to me is what real friendship is all about. Also, you are in the process of becoming friends with my best friend from when I was 6 years old, Tavia. So there's that transference going on too.
Yeah, it's deeply moving to me. And I just, because Tavia knows everything about plants and flowers, and I just, right before I got rid of my dog for this Zoom session, I was walking up and I'm like, oh, is that a moth or a butterfly? And I thought, I'll have to take a picture and ask Tavia. Yeah.
Tell you, this is a great thing to know. When a moth lights, I used to date a lepidopterist. When a moth lights, always the wings are closed. When a butterfly lights, always the wings are open.
Really?
That's how you know.
I'm more taken with the sentence that you just said. I used to date. Yes.
Yeah. Who had been an ichthyologist, but then changed to lepidoptery. And then became an expert in internet poker and a lawyer. All in the world. Yeah.
Oh, and there's an essay in that. There's an essay in that. So, and you're looking at the time. We didn't even talk about Dutch House.
Well, there it is. There it is. Yeah, I wrote it. And also, I've got a children's book that will have come out in September called A Scapegoat that Robin and I did together, which is about building a wall, which is about blaming a goat for all of the problems on the farm and building a higher and higher wall trying to keep him out. But he keeps jumping and he's blamed, the scapegoat.
Oh, yeah. Very, very timely.
Very timely, like Stella Endicott and the Forever Poem, my favorite.
Hey, what'd you eat for breakfast, Ann?
I had a bowl of fruit and a cup of tea. It was nice.
Yeah. I love that you pointed out how absolutely boring most of what we talk about is, and how fabulously interesting it is to me. So yes.
I just don't want people to think that we're Pound and Elliot, really. As it's not true. There are two things that have really helped me in this time. One of them is owning a bookstore. And that's helped me for a couple of reasons. One, I feel like I can't protect the world, which we all want to be able to do, but I can protect the people who are working in that store. And they're my family, and I love them so much. And they show up and they ship books, and we do curbside delivery, and we stay in, and we're safe, and we're helping get the books to the customers. And we have this incredible sense of purpose right now. People need to read. People need to read all the time. But right now, more than ever, the comfort that people are finding in books is essential. So the fact that Karen Hayes and I have this store, Parnassus Books, and we are able to get books to people and able to keep our staff safe means the world. And then as far as writing is concerned, I find that I am a little lost in that I haven't wanted to write a grown-up novel. I've been very interested in writing essays. I've been interested in writing nonfiction. It took me a long time to find my sea legs. And now that I'm really writing again, that's been a tremendous comfort. But it's all about settling yourself. In a way, it's a kind of meditation that you can once again sit quietly in this hard, sad time. You can sit quietly with your own thoughts and not look away. And when you can do that, you find your strength and your peace. And that's been a great gift for me.
Yeah, and I hear you with the bookstore, and I also hear you with the writing. And what's always in the back of my mind with me sitting down to write, because it does center me, and it's like, and it takes so long before the story goes out into the world, but oddly I feel like I'm connecting with people even when I'm sitting down alone in the room and working on the rough draft of something that no one will see and for years, literally years. And the other thing that is so much at the forefront of my brain now as I do it is that I want to do it I think specifically about kids as I do it now, and that I want them to know that to sit down and to connect with themselves this way is something that they can do, and that we need their stories. And so if I am encouraging children and adults too to do that, to show up a little bit each day, to connect with that deeper part of yourself and of humanity through writing a story or writing an essay, if I can encourage people to do that, then I'm duty bound to do it myself. So I feel like, how am I doing anything for the world by doing that? I'm not, but yet hopefully somebody can feel the energy of me sitting down and think, I will sit down too. And that if we all tell our stories, and if we all listen to each other's stories, we can find a way through this together. So that's kind of what's in my little brain.
That's beautiful. You make me think of Robert Kennedy.
No one's ever said that to me before, Ann.
I love you, Kate. This has been great.
This has been great. I love you too, Ann. Thank you.